You know, when you really think about it, life isn't some kind of magic. At its very core, it's architecture. Just a stunningly complex chemical architecture, all built from completely non-living matter. So today, let's try to decode that blueprint. We're going to find out how these simple, inanimate molecules come together to build the entire living world.
I mean, this is the central mystery, isn't it? How can a bunch of simple, inanimate molecules, just stuff, work together to create, well, life? How does a collection of non-living atoms and molecules suddenly become something that can move and think and feel and reproduce? How do you get from simple chemistry to something as complex as consciousness? It's a huge question.
Well, it turns out the answer isn't some kind of magical life force. And this, to me, is maybe the most profound discovery in all of biochemistry. It's this: life is governed by the exact same laws of physics and chemistry that rule the entire universe. There's no special ingredient, no secret sauce. It's just an absolutely incredible organization of molecules, all following the same predictable rules.
All right, so if life is this giant chemical play, it's time to meet the cast of characters. Let's zoom right in and take a look at the actual molecules that build and operate, well, every single living thing on this planet.
So if you look at all the molecules of life, you can pretty much sort them into two big camps. On one side, you've got the huge complex structures we call macromolecules. Think of these as the big building materials, the bricks, the steel beams. And then, on the other side, you have the much smaller metabolites. These are like the nuts and bolts, the fuel, the little things that get used up and transformed during all those biological processes.
Okay, so focusing on those big macromolecules, there are three absolute titans. These are the pillars holding up the entire structure of life. First, you've got proteins. They're the workhorses doing all the jobs. Then you have nucleic acids, like DNA, which are the blueprints. And finally, polysaccharides, which are all about providing structure and storing fuel.
Let's just take proteins for a second. They do pretty much everything inside a cell, and their real power comes from their shape. You can see it right here. What starts as a simple string of amino acids folds itself into this incredibly complex, unique 3D structure. And that final shape, that's what determines its specific job. Is it going to break down sugar? Is it going to fight off a virus? It all comes down to that shape. It's like a masterpiece of molecular origami, really.
Okay, so we've met the parts. But a pile of parts on its own doesn't really do anything, right? So now we need to understand the engine that powers it all. What are the dynamic processes that turn a cell into a living, breathing factory?
Well, that engine is called metabolism, and it's just this incredibly integrated network of chemical reactions. Think of it like this. On one side, you've got catabolism. That's all about breaking down fuels to release energy. And on the other side, you've got anabolism, which takes that energy to build all those complex macromolecules we were just talking about. It's this constant, perfectly balanced cycle of demolition and construction.
So that raises a question. How does the energy from the demolition site get over to the construction site? The answer is one single, absolutely crucial molecule, ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. You can think of it as the universal rechargeable battery of the cell. It gets all charged up during catabolism, and then it gets spent during anabolism to power, well, pretty much everything. It's the energy currency.
Okay, but there's a big problem here. A lot of life's essential chemical reactions are, on their own, incredibly slow, like way too slow for life to actually exist. So what's the solution? Enzymes. These are proteins that act as biological catalysts. If you look at the graph, you can see how they work by lowering what's called the activation energy. That's the hump a reaction needs to get over to start. But saying they lower it is a huge understatement. Some enzymes can speed up reactions by a factor of 1 trillion. Seriously. Without them, just digesting your lunch could take decades. They are what make life possible on a timescale that actually works for us.
So, we've seen just how elegant this whole system is when everything works perfectly. But what happens when a part is faulty? What happens when the blueprint itself has a mistake? This is where we need to zoom back out and connect this tiny molecular world directly to our own health.
And the consequences of a flawed blueprint can be really profound. So many of the diseases we're familiar with are at their very core biochemical problems. Take sickle cell anemia. That's caused by just a single amino acid change in one protein. Cystic fibrosis? That comes from a faulty protein channel. Alzheimer's disease? That's what happens when proteins start misfolding and clumping together. It just goes to show you how absolutely critical it is for every single one of these molecular pieces to do its job perfectly.
But here's the powerful flip side to all of this. Because we're starting to understand the blueprint, we can also start to become molecular engineers. We can actually use this knowledge to diagnose, to treat, and maybe even prevent some of these diseases.
And this understanding has really sparked a medical revolution. Think about it. We can diagnose illnesses just by measuring certain enzyme levels in the blood. We can design drugs that specifically target and shut down a faulty viral protein, which is how many HIV treatments work. And now, with the genomic revolution, we're moving into the era of personalized medicine, where treatments can be tailored specifically to your unique genetic code. It's incredible.
You know, the impact doesn't stop at medicine either. These same biochemical principles are totally fundamental to things like improving crop yields or creating pest-resistant plants in agriculture. And in industry, enzymes are absolute workhorses. They're used in everything from food tech, like making cheese, all the way to producing biofuels.
And this all brings us to what might be the most profound idea of all. When you really dig in and look at the metabolic pathways, at the genetic code, at the proteins, you find this remarkable, undeniable similarity across all domains of life. From a single tiny bacterium to a massive blue whale, we are all running on fundamentally the same biochemical software. It is maybe the most powerful argument there is that all life on this planet shares a common ancestor.
So let's just end with this thought. We are all connected by this shared chemical heritage. It's a universal language of proteins and DNA and ATP. So if we truly deeply understand this language, what are the possibilities? But also, what are the responsibilities that come with that knowledge? It's a question that really is going to define our future.